And new and a treat, so pay attention. I think you'll get a lot out of this event. One of the things that I wanted to alert you to is that if you're interested in this topic, which I hope that many of you will be because it affects your futures in and outside of academia, the last event that the program that I direct is putting together for you and for the Montclair community is called Food Stamps in Corporate Academia: The Scandalous State of Part-Time Faculty, Staff, and Working Students. This is, I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but there have been cases of faculty who work in part-time positions around the country. One of them in particular, I think, was where we got the title from, who actually was, needed to resort to having food stamps because of how difficult it is to cobble together a living in the contemporary climate, doing part-time work. And as students who also work to support yourselves, I'm sure that you can relate to some aspect of the difficult times in which we all live and why we think it's important for people to band together to talk about these issues and to come up with solutions. We will have the Montclair Adjunct Union present there as well as the New Jersey United, which is a student union in New Jersey. Joe here, one of our students, belongs as an office bearer to that. We'll also have the Montclair Faculty Union represented. So it's going to be an important event, and that's going to be held next Thursday on November the 6th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. right here. It will have an activist component. We hope to come up with some action agendas. So finally, I wanted to just also say, before I introduce Professor Besson, that our program every year does support some international organization that is working in the arena of women's rights, human rights, minority rights, LGBTQ rights. And this year we are supporting an organization that is based in India, a transnational feminist organization called Apne Aap, which is an organization that was founded about 20 years ago, and it really works with women who are forced into prostitution and into brothels, and often become subject to human trafficking, beyond the nation of India and so on. It's a very good organization. You can check it out. And what we typically do at our events is just pass a little basket around if you have any loose change, a quarter, 2 quarters, $1, $5, whatever you can afford, and you know that it will go to a good cause. So please just empty out your change pocket. That would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, I want to introduce Professor Yasmin Besson. I know one of her classes is here, so you already know who she is. We're very fortunate to have her with us as an affiliated faculty in the Women and Gender Studies program. She is currently an associate professor of sociology, and something she didn't mention in the bio that I asked her to write for me, to send me, is that she's also been a distinguished university distinguished scholar of 2012-2013, which is a unique honor conferred upon faculty in this university whose scholarship is top-notch. So we're very proud of that. She is currently also serving as the book review editor of a journal called Gender and Society, and she has recently finished a research project that was funded by the American Association of University Women on the gender wage gap in New Jersey. And this then ended up becoming a monograph that was published by the American Association of University Women. She also has another new book called Consuming Work, focusing on part-time youth labor in America, as well as in other industrialized countries, which is about to be out. Yes, yeah, is that correct? It's out already. Good. And that's a book in which you explore the inequalities in the youth labor force between people coded and male and female, right? So obviously of great interest to those of you who are getting ready to go out into the workforce. She's also currently working on a textbook on research methods in the field, including both qualitative as well as quantitative methods for all social sciences. And this will be forthcoming in January of next year, which is also going to be good. I'm sure many of us here might want to adopt it, right? So Professor Besson is going to introduce our speaker, so let's give her a round of applause.
I'm so excited to introduce Rob Okun to you. He's the editor and publisher of Voicemail magazine, and he's the former executive director of Men's Resource Center for Change, which is one of the earliest men's centers in North America. In his new book, you can see right there, Voicemail, the untold story of the pro-feminist men's movement. He chronicles the transformation of men and masculinity through the pages of the magazine, bringing readers inside one of the most important social justice movements most people have never heard of. He's also a psychotherapist and equal rights justice of the peace, who's also officiated weddings since 1997. So we're very excited to have him. Let's give him a big applause.
I'm really happy to be here. And if there are any couples who are thinking about getting married, talk to me later. So we've got about an hour to take a journey together about what it means for men to embrace the notion of being pro-feminist. And I make a distinction between describing myself as a feminist man, that is rather using the term pro-feminist, that I think the term being a feminist is reserved for women who actually experience oppression. And while men can identify with the oppressions that women have experienced as males, there's a certain amount of privilege that we have that, for me and for a lot of my colleagues, using that distinctive term pro in front of the word. So if that's a question that's going to come up, maybe I preempted one. I'm interested in this being interactive, so while I have a lot to say, I'm interested in what you have to say, because I know that all we have to do is wake up in the morning and there's something going on in the world, or in our communities, or in our professional sports leagues, or in our entertainment industry that feeds us ideas and concepts to think about, the ideas of gender equality. So my own story, I'm pretty, regular, socialized male, brought up in this culture, who had an aha moment, who had an awakening when I got to college. I was in Washington, D.C. in the late 60s, when the anti-war movement and civil rights movement were in full throttle, and the women's movement, the gay rights movement, and the environmental movement were just about to start percolating and take off. So I like to say that I showed up at just the right time as a first-year student. And I recognized right away that there was something happening in terms of how activism was being played out. And that was that men were kind of running the show. The new left, as it was referred to, the progressive movement that was fighting the war and was fighting for civil rights, had a very strong streak of males running it who were, in those years, pretty unconscious about gender. So as a first year, I was kind of relegated in with the women to do, how many know what a mimeograph machine is in this room? Okay. But this was a pre-copy machines, pre-photocopy machines. You'd actually have a stencil and you would hand crank on this purple ink, and that's how you created copies. So the first years and the women were doing that, or handing flyers, and the men were kind of running the show. And there was some little internal voice that was saying, something's not right with this picture. I didn't have the language for it. I certainly would have maybe been described as kindler, gentler, sexist guy of my time, but I still was a product of that era and that socialization. And I think all of us who show up on the planet in male-identified bodies, we have a certain amount of privilege. I want to ask a question here.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a question? Because we're getting this shadow on your face.
Oh, okay. So it's
that
better?
That would be better.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
I want to ask the guys a question. Those of you who have a car, or who drive a car, when get into that car? Guys, you ever look in the back seat? Raise your hand if you ever look in the back seat. Women, I'm asking you the same question. When you go out to your car to get in, how many of you look in the back seat? How many guys are like scratching their head or having some kind of an aha moment right now? Can someone tell me why the women are looking in the back seat and why the guys aren't? Yeah. Women are scared that someone's going to be in the back seat. And the guys are just like, we're not thinking about that. How many of us as guys, when we leave the mall, the parking lot at night, how many of us have a strategy of how we're going to get to our car? That we have our keys out, that we're either talking to someone for real on the cell phone or pretending that we are, that we have some mace in our bag. How many of you guys do that? How many women do that? Okay. So if this is new information for you as guys, and if it's maybe new information for you as women to know that guys are kind of, unconscious about this, then this is a good place to ask ourselves some questions about, what it means to be a man. And the messages that we as males have gotten in this culture are pretty damaging. So I'm not here to say that this is, there's an up, down, right, left about the issues, because they're all very nuanced. But the truth is that if we arrived on the planet in male-identified bodies, then we have some advantages, we have some privileges, we have some entitlements that if we're not willing to look at, we're going to be kind of stuck in a box that we call the man box. Has anyone in this room done an exercise called Be a Man, Act Like a Man, or the Man Box? Ever heard of it? Great. Okay. We don't have a whiteboard, but we're going to do this in our heads. We're going to just all participate. I'm going to say, be a man, act like a man, and you're going to call out what comes up when you hear that phrase. And the key here is that you personally don't have to believe this, but because you're a product of this society, these ideas are in your head. So if I say, act like a man, be a man, just popcorn style, just pop with what comes up.
Tough.
Tough.
Violent.
Don't cry.
Don't cry. Let's say it loud so I can hear you. What? Provider.
Somebody here said island?
No, violent.
Violent.
Violent. Keep going. Be a man. Act like a man.
Don't be so sensitive.
Don't be so sensitive.
Suck it up.
Suck it up.
Take up space on the subway.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So keep going.
People say you gotta have the balls to do this.
Right.
Don't be a pussy.
No, don't be a sissy. Right. Be a man. Act like a man. What else?
Show who's boss.
Show who's boss. Yeah. What else? Be a man.
Leader.
Leader. Father.
Try to rule over your woman.
Rule over your woman. Dominate.
Aggressive.
Don't be a girl. Aggressive.
Unemotional.
Unemotional.
Wear boxes instead of those little Superman drawers. Breathe. Stuff need to circulate.
Perfect. All right, so you can see that in just a couple of minutes, our collective little community for this hour, in a couple of minutes, we came up with a whole bunch of notions of what it means to be. Now, a man. The conventional idea. Now imagine that we had had a whiteboard and that I had drawn a box and all of those phrases, leader, tough, boxer, all of it was inside of there, okay? So that's the ticket. That's the ticket that we get as men. We're supposed to be in there. And some of us, we don't feel that way. Some of those things might work for us, but some of them we don't feel that way. So if we were outside of the box, then how would we be characterized? What would be the phrases and words? And again, you don't have to personally believe them, but they're in your heads because you're part of this culture. This popcorn style again. How are you characterized now if you're outside of the box?
Mama's boy.
Mama's boy. What? Compassionate. What was back here?
Sensitive.
Sensitive.
Oversensitive.
Oversensitive.
Alan Alda.
Alan Alda. If you remember.
Yeah,
Quiet.
that's a real one, but it's just what's happening when I was.
Sissy.
Sissy.
Gay.
Gay.
Too happy?
What? What did I hear after gay? Brave? Keep going. So you're outside of that conventional box. How are you characterized?
Spineless.
What?
Spineless.
Spineless.
Weak.
Weak. Girly mom. Mama's boy. Right? So now, imagine you're 8, 9, 10 guy. You're on the playground. You notice the clicks. You see what's happening. You're trying to read what's going on. You see where the bullies are. You see where the cool kids are. You want to stay under the radar. You want to kind of fit in. You don't want to get targeted. And what you're already at that age, you've already incorporated all of these messages. So what you're in a situation now is you have to figure out how you navigate through. And if the messages that you're getting are, I either need to be inside the box or outside the box, where are we going to choose? Where are the guys going to choose to be? Inside, because otherwise you're going to get targeted. And even though there's, for a lot of guys, there may be many things objectionable about being inside, they aren't ready to challenge those conventional notions of what it means to be a man. So that's kind of the dynamic. And now we're in this period that I like to think of as, the social transformation of masculinity, that masculinity is in a period of flux, that even as we have, the Ray Rices of the world out there. Everybody know who Ray Rice is in the room, the Baltimore Ravens football player who will talk to his fiancee, now wife. Even though we're in that world, there are many, many, many examples in this country, on every continent and around the world, that men are changing. Men are deciding that they want to find the best of those aspects of masculinity that were inside, like a leader and a provider and being strong, and some of the aspects on the outside being sensitive and being compassionate and being nurturing, to blend, to find a new way to understand what our personal ideas are about men and masculinity. And we actually, the phrase is now more being used, masculinities, that there is a continuum of experiences that male identified people are having. And so masculinity, like femininity, are social constructions. And if we're going to transform and remake and recast what it means to be man in this culture, then we have to be open to a really broad understanding of what those possibilities are. So I come out of what I unabashedly call the pro-feminist men's movement, the anti-sexist men's movement, the movement of men who, when the women's movement got started, the modern day women's movement got started in around 1970, roughly, there were men who said, this looks kind of cool. Not like so cool that I'm going to just jump right in and get involved, but just, I like what I see. I like to, I'm kind of jealous. Women are having what were called consciousness raising groups. They were getting together and thinking about the issues of oppression and their possibilities for changing their second-class status. And some men were like, whoa, this is kind of intense, that women are going off and they're having in these meetings, and I'm stuck here, and I don't know what's going on, so I'm a little freaked out. But then when they listen to, for those men who were in heterosexual relationships, when they listen to women talking about fairness and equality and second-class citizenship, if they had even the slightest bit of an open heart and open mind, they're going, duh, I didn't think about it. I just assumed this is the way the world was, that I go to work and I come home and you've got a hot meal on the table. Like, what's up with that changing? So for some guys, it was like, uh-oh, things are changing, and I'm feeling a little resistant to it. Now, I'll just parenthetically ask, how many of you are living in families where both parents, if you're living in a two-parent household, where both parents are working? So a good number. And that there's some division of domestic responsibilities, that dads and moms are sharing things from household chores to taking care of younger kids. And you have that experience. A few. So, more than a few. So, you know, you're representing the transformation that I'm talking about, because at the time that I was your age, it would have been a pretty much of a no-brainer that, you know, Dad went off with this wonderful bucket of briefcase and Mom was stirring the Campbell soup and folding the laundry. And that was pretty much it. It was only when women said, this is enough. We've been through this for too many eons that we're not going to stand for this anymore. And we're going for our full liberation. And they pushed open this portal that said, you know, full humanity, full citizenship, full rights. And when they walked through that portal, there was no other sign that said women. So if, as a man, you said the basic ideas that these women are talking about having full rights and being able to get a full education and choose a career and decide when or if they want to become mothers, or when or if they want to get married, or when or if they want to be in a relationship with a man or a woman or someone else, all of those things, all of those aspects of life that now, for you guys, may feel like, duh, that's kind of how it is, isn't it? Well, it wasn't always that way, and we're hardly there yet. We may be more there in certain pockets of the country, like the Northeast, than we are in other places. But all of us probably know of situations either within the boundaries of our country or elsewhere around the world where we're hardly where we want to be in terms of full equality. So it's in that context that those small number of men who were saying, I agree, started to become involved in what I'm calling the pro-feminist men's movement. And initially, you might have referred to us as the gentleman's auxiliary to the women's movement. So we were maybe doing childcare so women could go off to a demonstration, or we were standing with candles on the side of the road when women were marching at a Take Back the Night march to protest against domestic violence and sexual violence. But we were starting to pay attention. We were starting to get something is shifting here. And the internal conflict was, if I give up some of my privilege, if I actually see that I don't have to make this, I can't live with myself now that I've opened my eyes with the idea that I expect both of us to go to work and one of us to come home and, you know, kick back and, open a beer or turn on the radio, and the other goes into the kitchen and starts making dinner. I can't, as someone who started to wake up, I can't live with myself if I'm willing to accept that. So, you know, the question that gets asked a lot in today's world is, you know, you see it on the magazine headlines, can women have it all? And the answer is no. Why? Because men do. Men have it. And it's only now that we're in this period of change where home and they're making dinner, or men are picking up the kids at school or from the soccer game or whatever, and are being more part of a balanced way of doing domestic life and doing life. But we're just in the beginning stages. We're in the early stages, even though this is work that's been going on for 40 years. So let me show you some of these slides, and then we can have a conversation. So I'll start right here with here. This is a book called A Book of Readings for Men Against Sexism. When did it come out? 1977. So how long is that? 37 years ago? If someone had said to you, maybe the type design, it looks maybe old school, but if someone had said, when would a book like this have come out, I doubt anyone would have said 1977, and I probably should have asked the question. Who's heard of the Equal Rights Amendment? And so tell me what that was. Someone. Yeah.
Congress shall make no law abridging against discrimination on the basis of sex or gender.
So this was an amendment to the Constitution that was being promoted during the 1970s, and it required ratification by 2/3 of the states. And even though it had 65%, it came within a couple of states of being ratified, but it's never come back again. But that middle Man for the ERA newsletter, Men Alive Nationally for the Equal Rights Amendment, was a group that had chapters around the country that was in support of women's rights and having an Equal Rights Amendment. So this, we'll see this one later. This is coming up in the more modern times. So here's a statement that, based on what I've been saying today, seems to be something that a lot of men might be impressed with. But if I told you that that sentiment was made 100 years ago, this guy was a playwright. He was the editor of a radical magazine out of Greenwich Village called New Masses, and he got it 100 years ago. So what's been the holdup? This is the center that I came out of in Amherst, Massachusetts, as Yasmin said in the introduction, one of the earliest centers in the country. This was 1982, the Men's Resource Center was established. Now this is a program in Springfield, Massachusetts, Men of Color Health Awareness, MOCA. Many roads to get men to think about these kinds of issues. For some men, it's going to be our health. And it's a pretty well documented fact that many men, most men, don't do too good of a job of taking care of our health. We don't go to checkups. We don't talk about physical ailments, and we rarely talk about depression and mental health issues. So this was a strategy in Springfield, Mass. To begin with a health awareness as a way into talking about that whole range of issues that I've been addressing so far. Some of you may have noticed before I took my coat off, I have this white ribbon on. And this is, well, who, has anyone heard of the White Ribbon Campaign? So the White Ribbon Campaign, of which this is an example of the Massachusetts version, and that's our current governor, outgoing Governor Deval Patrick at the podium. The White Ribbon Campaign is a perfect example of men taking some leadership around these issues. 1989, December, a man goes into Montreal Polytechnic Institute, sends all the men out of the room, and shoots and kills 14 women and wounds 10 others with a diatribe about women and feminism. In Canada, which has until this incident last week in Ottawa at their state capital, governmental capital, federal capital, rarely sees this kind of violence. Men in Canada said, what are we going to do about this? This is outrageous. And over the course of a year, planned and organized and created this campaign of men saying, I will not condone, excuse, or stand silent in the face of violence against women, and launched a campaign that today is operating in about 60 countries and has had millions of men signing that pledge and being involved in activist activities around it. And what's happened in Massachusetts, if there's anyone who would like to see something like that happen in this state, let me know, because the guy on the far right, Craig Norbert, has been a master at organizing these campaigns, and it's easily replicable in any state. So for those of you who are getting interested in these issues, you check out that date, April 22nd to the 24th. There's a great organization, colleagues in Washington, D.C., Men Can Stop Rape, which since 1997 has been doing a range of programs, including Men of Strength clubs, where they are working with middle school and high school age young men to recast their ideas about men and masculinity, and to question the notions, all the things that we've been talking about, and to become agents of change in their communities. But this summit, the Healthy Masculinity Summit, will be a really exciting, hands-on, and there are always lots of slots for students and lots of scholarships or free. So if you're interested in that, mencanstoprape.org or talk to me. But April 24th. This is an example out of New York City. Every Father's Day, on the steps of the City Hall, the call for 10,000 fathers and men to take the pledge to end violence in our homes and our communities. So these programs and activities are real, and they've been going on for a long time. Have either of these guys on the two left, Tony Porter or Ted Bunch, have they been to campus? This organization, A Call to Men, they do some great trainings and speaking out about men challenging these ideas. And while they speak to all audiences, they've particularly been resonant working with communities of color. And jumping fast forward, this is a training that was done in Liberia by some colleagues of mine. Doing trainings where we're asking the same questions about men and masculinity, where we're doing that exercise. And you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, that regardless of culture, country, origin, race, the same basic messages that men have received, the training that we've got, that socialized training, when you do that, act like a man, be a man, you get very, very similar results. This is South Africa, Something Gender Justice, the One Man Can campaign, which South Africa has, among the many things that have happened in the last 20 years since Nelson Mandela became president, and they had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and they wrote the most stunningly beautiful new constitution, even as they struggle to realize its aims, just as this country struggles to realize the aims of our Constitution. They've done some amazing work. So they really have lots of different things going on. You can read Love Passionately, Stop AIDS, End Domestic Violence, Break the Cycle. They're really about creating an environment where men, and particularly young men, there's been billboard campaigns all over the country about fathers and fatherhood. Just more examples. I want to talk for a minute about Men Engaged. I was saying at lunch before, this is an international alliance. If any women in the room are feeling down about the behavior of men in your lives, or nationally or internationally, go to this website, menengage.org, and you will feel a sense of inspiration and maybe some hopefulness. Men Engage is an alliance, a global alliance, of which there are 687 nonprofit organizations around the world, broken up into different regions. So there's North America Men Engage, there's Men Engage Africa, Men Engage Europe, Men Engage Latin America, Men Engage South Asia, and they organize a symposium. The first one happened 5 years ago in Rio, Brazil, and it drew 475 people from about 75 countries. On November 10th, in New Delhi, in India, more than 700 men and women allies from around the world will be gathering for the second symposium, and I'm going to be one of those people. In the magazine, the new issue of the magazine, which is at the printer, I only have the cover and a story or two, but you can pass it around. Changing Men Around the Globe. So I get to both feel an awareness very closely about the bad news, but I every day get to have an example of connecting with the work that's going on that's about this change, and it's really, even when I feel despairing and down, I'm aware that I have colleagues and friends around the world. And so in this special issue of the magazine that's just coming out, I have articles from writers and researchers and activists from Australia and Brazil and Swaziland and Pakistan and Peru, South Africa. So I get to hopefully share and plant the seeds of optimism and possibility with younger generation, so that you can feel like, oh, I didn't know that that there's this international alliance of men and boys working for gender justice. I didn't know, and now that I know, maybe I'll find a way on my campus or in my community to plug in. Here's and at this point, it's up to 687 NGOs from around the world. It's quite amazing. That's the logo from the Rio conference in Spanish, English, and Portuguese. And I was saying to someone, the F word, feminism, came up, and it's back in the news again. But a couple of falls ago, we did this fall of last year. Feminism is good for men campaign at the magazine. There's not enough for everybody here, but those of you who are most interested will probably grab it. The rest of you can go to voicemail, MALEmagazine.org, and you can read back issues online. But it's really interesting that a word that's basically saying, equality, fairness, balance, same for you, same for me, has been so demonized. Feminism, like Floyd Dell said 100 years ago, it makes sense and it's good for men. So we launched this campaign with different images. We did it in English, Spanish, and Chinese to just promote the idea that there's a whole variety of reasons and there's a whole variety of ways that men can get involved in supporting ideas of fairness and justice. And it's too bad. I mean, how many of you feel uncomfortable with that word? Or feel like the word has got some baggage? One person, my hunch is that you're maybe feeling a little reticent to say, oh, that word is problematic. I mean, I'm acknowledging it shouldn't be, but, so I'm going to try again. How many of you feel like the word feminism and identifying as a feminist or being pro-feminist is problematic? So how many of you then may believe in the issues, an actual definition, but feel like reticent to self-identify. So, you know, there's these T-shirts that you see all different kinds of people wear that said, "This is what a feminist looks like." You know, that when President Obama was elected, Ms. Magazine, you know, put him on the cover with this, this dress shirt opened up with a kind of Superman thing in it, with a "This is what a feminist looks like." And so it's really up to us today to ask ourselves, who's trying to denigrate fairness and equality? Who's trying to undermine women's rights? In whose interest is it to try to take some of the gains that the women's movement has made in women's lives, and by extension in men's lives and children's lives? Who's trying to undermine that, and what are we going to do about it? Because there's clearly, it's 2014, and we're having this discussion again about, white men, lawmakers deciding women's rights around their reproductive health. It's 2014, haven't we gotten past that? And if we believe that that's a fight that we want to be fighting on behalf of our sisters and aunts and mothers, and for some in the room who have daughters of an age themselves, to have full agency over your reproductive rights, then being in support of basic feminist ideals is essential. Okay. So here's an example of an image that probably people wouldn't necessarily think that they'd be seeing in Iran. So if someone knows the story better than I, you can remind me of the detail, but what I remember is that a judge, as a punishment for a man for some not super significant crime, his punishment was going to be having to go out in public wearing a dress. And these courageous, progressive, insightful, and very creative and resourceful men said, cool, if this is what the punishment is, what's wrong with being a woman? What's wrong with, we should be celebrating women. So we'll go and we'll dress in a dress and go out on the street and really kind of make the national conversation in our country about these ideas, and basically try to confront the old school thinking of a judge who thinks that in 2013, in that case, that that's an appropriate punishment to tell somebody that there's something second class, there's something wrong with being a woman. So now these are these campaigns. I'm not going to linger on too many of these, but this is another example. Men Care, this global fatherhood campaign that Men Engage has launched. It's operating in about 15 countries, and there's another 10 that are getting ready to launch, where they're really positive images about fatherhood and caregiving. Some of you are aware of the campaign that President Obama got that behind, My Brother's Keeper, which is really a great opportunity for younger men and younger men of color to take on another slice of that redefining manhood and masculinity. The United Nations has this United campaign, Break the Silence when you witness violence against women and girls, do not sit back, act. The United Nations has been very involved around the world in challenging gender-based violence. This is another campaign, Ring the Bell, which is really calling on men to step up. This is a campaign directed at Latino men. This is the one that the White House just launched in the last month. It's on us, and it's talking about specifically geared towards sexual assaults on campuses, where there's been for the have never heard the words, we have to challenge sexual assault coming out of the White House until this administration, for whatever other criticisms any of us might have with the administration on this topic, they've been ahead of the curve, doing pretty good work. And who knows who Emma Watson is? And who knows what Emma Watson did about a month ago at the UN? You've heard of this new campaign, He for She? So, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who can raise the visibility of women's equality and the transformation and the redefinition of masculinity, you know, I don't care if they're a Harry Potter film star. If they have a platform and they can get us to think, then let's go for it. So, you know, her speech was there were so many hits on the UN Women's, that's the name on their website, UN Women, that it crashed. And now this He for She campaign, heforshe.org, is now taking steam, it's picking up steam. And so, for as much bad news is out there, the good news is here. It keeps happening, and it's, you know, when I think that in 2 weeks there's going to be 700 people from 75, 85 countries who are working on these issues, particularly from the perspective of engaging men and boys for gender justice, then it's easy for me to get up in the morning and, you know, see what I have to do. So this is the last slide. I'm going to leave it up here. My colleagues in the White Ribbon campaign up in Canada just put this sentence together. Gentlemen, reminds me of like the NASCAR, you know. Gentlemen, start your engines. Gentlemen, it's time for a new code. Manhood. And I think I'm going to stop there, and we can get into a conversation that I would welcome. I really appreciate your pretty rapid